Well, it's Sunday, the 14th of December, 2008. Welcome to the Tap Keg Craft Brewer, and get the jug out because we've got a nice light show for you because it's Christmas and we don't want to overload your poor little brain box. But as usual, addresses. The web page is still there, surprisingly, oz.craftbrewer.org. Heaps of brewing information hidden on that page still if you care to look it all up. The radio program, of course, is found at radio.craftbrewer.org. All the archive shows are there for those sick people who want to listen to me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Poor bastards, you are indeed. Email addresses, luckyian@smartchat.net.au if you want to contact the Cellarman, or Graham L. Sanders at westnet.com.au if you wish to contact me. And I do get back to you eventually. And, of course, you can get me on Skype. Yes, I'm available on Skype. Just look up Craft Brewer or Graham L. Sanders. Now, heaps of spammers on Skype, so if you're going to contact me, at least say something about beer and the show so that I know it's someone serious and not one of these spammers trying to contact me. But I have an answering machine on my computer. If I'm online and don't answer, you can leave a message. Please do. We always play those messages. And, of course, snail mail address, Graham Sanders, 3 Hazel Street, Rasmussen, Townsville, North Queensland, Australia, 4815. And why do we give up this information? Well, it's you, the craft brewer, who makes this show, and we're after your feedback, song requests, input, topics, questions, you name it, we're after it, and I sift through all the rubbish that you send us to give us a quality program. And speaking of a quality program...
The Cellarman's here.
Oh, will you shut up? What's on this program? Well, we taste the Kleist beer. What's a Kleist beer? Well, you'll have to just listen to the program to find out. We've got some interesting feedback, which we're going to put the Cellarman to the test on. And in our calibration series, I suppose it's turning into, we calibrated my roller mill, and we had a little debate with the Cellarman, and I'm going to prove him wrong yet again. The Australian alcohol reform tax is gathering speed at the moment. If you listen to the archives of the program, we're going to follow through with more stories on that. In our series, Risky Business, yes, part 2 of Risky Business. Will the guys set up their brew pub, and will they sell decent beer? More on that. And in our technical section, speeding up your brew day. Many people ask me how I can get through a double decoction in as little as 6 to 8 hours. Well, there are tricks to it, and we're going to give you some of the tips to speed up your brew day. And since it's Christmas, we have a couple of beer songs relating to Christmas, or beer thingies relating to Christmas. Anyway, however you want to put it, a couple have been sent in to us by listeners, and we are going to play those as well. But in late and breaking stock market report, yes, Rio Tinto is slashing and burning every step of the way. The world's second largest miner, producer of aluminium, that superior metal used in the barley crusher malt mill, is slashing jobs left, right and centre. What is happening to the world, craft brewer?
Rio Tinto shares have surged today by more than 12%, and after the close of trade, it became apparent why. The miner announced an ambitious plan to bring net debt down. It's cutting 14,000 jobs worldwide, more than halving capital expenditure.
Yes, 14,000 odd jobs going. Will there be enough aluminium out there for the barley crusher malt mill? The superior malt mill, made with the superior aluminium body, cold rolled steel rollers, the duck's nuts, the bee's knees, the roller mills. Will there be enough? Well, yes, there is, because I told Rio Tinto's board that if they don't supply the barley crusher malt mill with aluminium, they're in big shit from this radio program. And guess what? Like China, they crumbled before me. So there you go. Do Google them up, the barley crusher malt mill. And for more rubbish, g'day, Cellarman!
God, thank Christ that waffle's over.
And what?
I'm going to bring some intelligence to this program. I'm going to tell a joke.
Hang on, so early in the program?
Yeah, get it over and done with it when it gets serious.
There's not going to be a too serious program. We're going to keep this nice and light. I'm sure the craft brewer does not want an hour and a half program before Christmas.
Yeah, okay, good. Okay, here we go. A grade 3 teacher is given a lesson on nutrition and decides to ask the students what they had for breakfast. To add spelling content, she asks the students to spell their answers. All right? Susan puts up her hand and says she had an egg. E-G-G.
Okay, yeah.
All right. Very good, says the teacher. Peter said he had toast, Toast. Excellent. Johnny has his hand up and the teacher reluctantly calls on little Johnny. I had fuck all, he says, Fuckall. The teacher's mortified and obviously scolds little Johnny. Later, when the lesson turns to geography, she asks the students some rudimentary questions. Susan correctly identifies the capital, Canada. Peter is able to tell her which ocean is off Canada's east coast. When it's Johnny's turn, the teacher remembers his rude answer and decides to give him a very difficult question. Johnny, she says, where is the Pakistani border? Johnny ponders the question finally and says, the Pakistani border is in bed with my mother. That's why I got fuck all for breakfast.
Oh, dear oh me. Have you got any serious news to report there, Cellarman, or is this your contribution yet again for the program?
Well, let's see. I did a maple wheat ale the other day, and I even brought over a sample for you to try. Well, the other week, a couple of weeks ago.
A maple wheat ale?
It's made by a company in Canada, a brew pub in Canada.
All right.
And, they put in, obviously, maple syrup into it, or some, and the recipe calls for what I made.
Hang on, before you start sprouting the recipe,
I'm not going to say what the recipe, but I'm just saying for the amount I made, which is 2 kegs, it was about 500 mils of maple syrup.
Well, we'll have a taste of this, and you can give out the recipe in rough Reader's Digest form when we have a sample later in the program. But speaking of beers to drink, I've brought out my Kleist beer. Now, to the craft brewer out there are a few brewers in the world that can invent new styles. And you're lucky that on this program, modesty forbids me from bragging about the fact that I've invented a new beer style.
Invented? Ha ha ha. In other words, he stuffed up a perfectly good Stein beer.
I have invented a Kleist beer. And for those who don't know what a Kleist beer is, of course, a Kleist beer is a beer not made with hot rocks, is it, Cellarman?
No, it's made with hot rocks that crumbled and become hot pebbles.
That's it, hot gravel. So this beer was made with hot gravel. Now, what's been our problem so far in making a decent Stein beer, Cellarman?
Well, the biggest problem is that burnt acrid taste we've been getting, obviously, and we've got to try and get our way around that.
Well, and that's exactly it. We've been trying to get the rocks hot enough, and the trouble we've been having is the hotter we get the rocks to get the caramelisation, they seem to be burning and giving a bit of an acrid bite, haven't they?
Yeah, that's been the biggest problem with it. It does mellow out with age and that. So
yeah, but it still has a little bit there, but we still get that caramel toffee flavour in the beer, which is really good. What happened in this experiment, Craft Brewer, for those who haven't followed the archives, radio.craftbrewer.org, what happened in this experiment that went wrong, as the Cellarman said? We've got a furnace called, what's its name?
R2D2.
That's right. And if you're in England, it's called something else?
Dialect.
That's it. Either way, our little furnace gets the rocks super hot, and we've been having no trouble with the caramelisation and the toffee. But this burnt acrid taste we've been trying to
eliminate.
Yeah. Now, in the experiment, I thought I'd got some decent granite that was good, and we'd be going to bigger and bigger rocks all the time, haven't we?
Oh, yeah.
Well, we were thinking of going to one large, super big rock and just dropping it in. But in this experiment, Craft Brewer, the granite that I got totally crumbled in the furnace. That tells you how hot the furnace gets, that this lump of granite, and it's hard, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Sledgehammers bounce off it does. I had a hard time breaking it apart. Well, in the furnace, it crumbled to a gravel. And I decided to use it anyway because I had no other rocks to use, did I?
Well, this is true.
And anyway, so I threw it in, and this is the beer that's resulted from the gravel being used, and Kleist means gravel in Germany. So this Kleist beer, have a taste of this and see what you think, Cellarman.
It's got a good aroma to it. Nice and clear in that.
Yeah, but the important thing is...
there's no acrid aftertaste or whatsoever. Slightly caramelly.
It's caramelly,
taste.
got a caramelly toffee taste to it, but it hasn't got that acrid taste.
No, it hasn't. It's got an unusual flavour in it, and that's probably because it's still got some of the gravel in it.
It could very well have, by the way. But it got me thinking, Cellarman, we've been thinking about getting bigger and bigger rocks. Perhaps we should be going smaller and smaller and getting them hotter and hotter. And of course, the smaller the rocks we get, we can coat the bottom of the furnace to ensure that the heat gets through every bit of gravel, can't we?
Well, that's right. We can do it that way. And also, I'd like to go back to our original one, which was the ceramics, and slice them, because they're like a tube. If we could slice them like donuts, into donut sizes, it'd be bloody good, I think.
Well, it looks like, Craftbrewer, that our experiments are continuing. Plus side of this latest beer, this Kleist beer, is no acrid taste. It's got the coffee caramel flavours in it. Colour, I think, is about right. It's that really dark, coppery colour, of course. Body, everything else. It seems that we may be going wrong way round. And when you think of it, when you see a proper Stein beer being made, Cellarman, they are large rocks.
Yeah, but it's a large bloody fermenter in that as well, isn't it?
Well, it's a large boiler.
Boiler,
you mean
yeah.
boiler,
Boiler,
don't you?
sorry,
Yeah. Well, it's a large boiler with large rocks. So really, they're almost like pebbles in a...
Compared to the size of the container, they are, aren't they?
They are. So I'm starting to think maybe we should look at this. So anyway, we'll keep following through on this experiment, by the way, Craftbrewer, just to see how it goes. And I'm going to apologise to the Craftbrewer. I promised a review of a book called Drink, A Cultural History of Alcohol by Ian Gatley. And I was going to promise you that I'd read a couple of chapters and give a review and go forth. Well, I haven't had a chance to do such because I've been playing around with computers and fences and heaven knows what else. I'm sure that's exciting for your Craftbrewer to know that information. But I do promise, Craftbrewer, I will start reading this book now that I'm getting on top of all the work around the house. Oh, I'm such a funny lad at times.
Yeah.
But anyway, I will start giving a review on that.
You said by Christmas, but you didn't say which Christmas. So
I didn't say which Christmas.
That's an event.
It. I said I had it read by Christmas, didn't I?
Yep.
Yes, I didn't mention which Christmas.
That's it.
Anyway, Squire, what other information have you got from your brewery?
Oh, well, I'm going to do a Kolsch on Monday, or tomorrow, that is.
Yeah, I did a Kolsch last week, and it's really fermented out well, and it's ready to keg after only a week, I'll tell you. It's really dried out rather nicely, actually.
And my fridge worries are not fully over, but they're being solved in the interim.
Yes, you've jimmied up a water cooler, haven't you?
That's right.
You've jimmied up a water cooler and shoved it into your big chest freezer, haven't you?
Oh, only the bloody cooling section of it, not the compressor and that. And I've got two fans on it now, one blowing through the tube and one blowing down the end of the chest freezer. And I've got it down to 15 degrees with 6 kegs in there.
Oh, that's not too bad.
Yeah.
That's not too bad. And speaking of bloody brewing gear, by the way, I went out to my brew room the other day. I'm missing my plate chiller.
I didn't think you were going out to your brew room for quite a while yet.
I'm missing my plate chiller. You have any idea where it's got to?
I know exactly where it is.
Yeah, where is it? Where is it?
It's at my brew room.
You've nicked it, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
Why have you nicked it, scumbucket?
Well, I've modified it and...
What do you mean modify? How could you modify a perfectly good plate chiller?
Well, I've got my own little touches to it, and I'm going to try it on Monday or tomorrow with my Temperite, my water-filled Temperite.
All right, so you want to test it with a Temperite to see how well it can chill.
Yeah.
Just for your own... You don't believe me, do you? I give you the facts and figures. Do you believe me?
No, I never believe anything you say.
Speaking of people who don't believe what I say, and we always tell you, Craftbrewer, don't believe a word we say, because there's plenty of idiots on radio who claim to be experts. Very few of us are. Right, Cellarman?
Dead right. I totally agree with that. There's one statement I will agree with.
Anyway, and we always tell you, don't believe a word we say. Go out and do the experiments. Well, I got a wonderful email from Soren, and I'll read this out. Remember the enzyme show we did about a month or two back?
Yep.
And one of the enzymes we talked about that no one else talks about in the mash, and yet we believe it's the most important enzyme for dryness of your beer, is limit dextrinase. Correct?
That's right.
It rests temperatures approximately what?
Approximately 60 degades.
And what does it do?
And that's Celsius, by the way, people.
Oh, thank you very much. And what does it do? And what does it do, Cellarman?
Well, obviously, the reason we spoke about before, it breaks down your dextrin, so you get a drier beer out of it.
That's right. Now, look up the archives, radio.craftbrewer.org for this information. It's quite in-depth. No other program talks about that, and they say that you can't make a beer any drier than what the malt house gives you for the malt, and that is wrong. You can make a beer as dry as you like by using a limit dextrinase rest. Here's proof of it. Hi, Graham, he says in an email. That enzyme show you did a while ago really broke my bad spell of brewing. Last winter, I used the Y yeast Danish lager for 8 brews. Now, the Y yeast Danish lager yeast is a very dry brewing yeast, right?
Yep, it's very, what do you call it?
Well attenuated.
Well attenuated, yeah.
That's right, it's really good. He says, no matter how I nursed the yeast, no matter how I mashed, I could not make it attenuate more than 75-76%. The last 2 lagers I brewed this winter, I tried to include the limit dextranase rest you talked about. So this is it. So I mashed at 20 minutes at 60C, 20 minutes at 65C, 20 minutes at 68C, and did a mash out at 75. And you ready for the results, Cellarman?
Yeah,
I now have an attenuation of 80-81% with exactly the same yeast. In other words, he's increased his attenuation by a massive 5% by doing a limit dextranase rest. And as he puts here, I'm now making my German Pilsners nice and dry, and they are very tasty. And that goes to show you that a lot of the stuff we talk about ain't rubbish, and that if you do the experiments, you might be in for a pleasant surprise. Now, speaking of another pleasant surprise in our feedback section, Craft Brewer, let's put the Cellarman on the spot with a bit of technical knowledge, shall we? Because he claims he knows it all. Got a wonderful email here. Out of difference to you and the Cellarman, I have a Choco Smoked Stout in the fermenter right now. I succeeded in smoking my own malt using cocoa bean husks. And
that's a good one. Yeah.
That's a good one. And as we've said before, fear no beer. Experiment. Do the experiments that we asked you to do. The worst you can do is make a beer that's average, and I'm going to be surprised if this beer doesn't turn out to be a beautiful tasting beer. But the main reason I wrote is to ask you yet another question. I have found and got hold of some phosphoric acid at 75% concentration to start cleaning the beer stones off my kegs and kettle. But I have no experience in diluting acids. All I've ever done with acids is throw them into the swimming pool or gone to the Grateful Dead concert. Grateful Dead?
Yeah, I think he's talking about the...
Oh, sniffing acids. Oh, whatever, yeah. Whatever. Okay, yeah. So he's got no experience with acids other than sniffing it and throwing it into the pool. Would you give me the basics of mixing down the acid to get a good 3% solution for cleaning the kegs? So there you go, Cellarman. You are the so-called experts.
Okay, that's simple.
He's got a 75% acid
75%
concentration.
acid concentration. I'd look at, there's rough figures there, about a 25 to 1 mix. How's that for the top of your head?
So he puts in what?
Well, let's assume he's got a 20 litre keg, all right?
Yep.
He's going to fill it up to the top.
Yep.
I'd put in approximately 800 millilitres, 750, 800 millilitres of acid, and the rest water. That's about a 25 to 1 mix.
And that will clean his keg out.
Yes. The first stage, anyway, you've got to take the other stuff off as well with the beer stone.
Beer stein. How many beers have you had?
1.5.
I know it's Christmas, but bloody hell, mate. This is getting a bit bad, it is. So, anyway, we're looking at a 25 to 1 dilution. Yeah. What you do there with any dilution is quite simple, is be brave, fear no beer, as the show has always said. So, for 10 millilitres of acid, it's 250 millilitres of water. What you do is you get your 250 millilitres of water, get your acid, 10 mils of acid, and just throw it straight into the water, instant dilution. That's the best way of doing it. Or 2.5 litres of water to 100 mils of acid. That's your dilution rate that you need to go with.
No, that's exactly what I would say. If you're a little bit nervous about it, buddy, put a pair of safety glasses on and obviously wear a pair of rubber gloves.
Oh, stop being a wimp. It's how hard can it be?
Well, I said
in a bit of water.
I said if you're feeling a bit worried about
it. Fair dinkum, these bloody do-gooders out there, next minute they'll be telling you to wear gloves and goggles when you put petrol in your motor mower and all the rest of it.
They do, don't they?
Oh, God almighty. It's bloody a bit of acid, bit careful, measure it out, chuck it in, stir it up, and then you're right to go. Bloody hell, will you stop being a bloody do-gooder in this thing? I'll sack you from this program.
Oh, you're going to take my birthday off me, are you?
Yes,
you're going to deduct my wages.
I'll get John Palmer for this program if you're not careful.
Yeah. There's no other idiot out there bloody stupid enough to do this, would you?
And speaking of stupid idiots, let's have a talk about recalibrating roller mills, shall we?
We can do that.
Yes. Now, Craft Brewer out there, in the last few programs, we've been talking about recalibrating our brewing needs because you can slip over time. Now, one of the things I've noticed in my brewing is I've had a slight drop in efficiency. So I've been going through all my gear and everything else, and I haven't quite worked out where it was until I had a look at my 10-year-old roller mill. Now, my roller mill's made out of stainless steel rollers. It's actually the shaft of a fishing trawler. I think if you look up a couple of years back, I talked about how to make it. It's radio.craftbrewer.org if you want to look up the archives to the program. Anyway, I went and had a look at my roller mill. Now, I find out that the gap in the roller mill had increased by 0.1 of a millimetre over the 10 years. Now, it doesn't sound like much, craft brewer, but that was enough to drop my efficiency by roughly 5%. So I decided to go over to the Cellarman and use his engineering prowess that he claims to have.
Prowess.
No, prowess, because I don't consider you I don't consider you to have any sort of... Don't you poke me with that bloody pen now. Put it down. Anyway, go over to the Cellarman's workshop because he's got all the gear there, and I thought I'd reset the roller mill and work out why the hell it had slipped. Now, the very first thing, Ian, that when I get over your place, he took it apart. Had the gap in the mill been as a result of the rollers slipping outwards?
No, definitely not. The bearings were still firm in their housing, so...
Everything was firm in its housing. Nothing had shifted.
Took us a bit of effort to actually get the bearings out of the housing.
So absolutely nothing had shifted. Now, the way my roller mill's made, craft brewer, and I must get photos of it up onto the web one day, is I've got bearings set into the wood casing, and it's very hard jarrah wood, which is solid wood, isn't it, mate?
Yeah, it's very dense wood, very, as you say, very solid.
Very solid wood. Will never move in a million years. And I adjust the gap by putting in what they'd call sleeves of metal... Shims, and you move the bearing in and out by putting shims in either side of the bearing of the hole, and you firm it up that way. Well, it hadn't moved at all, had it, Cellarman?
No, put it this way, the bearings were, as I said, were still tight in the housing, so they hadn't worn the housing.
Okay, so where did the increase in my gap size come from?
Well, it's rather obvious. You think about it, but people, don't really think about it that much because, surprisingly enough, even though the grain is softer than the stainless steel, it will eventually wear it and wear it out and round off your little knurlings or whatever you put on it, round off the sharp edges and smooth them out.
That's exactly what's happened, Crupper. And what's happened here is over the 10 years, and this will happen to all roller mills, won't it, Cellarman?
Yep, definitely will.
Even though the grain's soft and the metal's hard, it wears from the constant use, and over 10 years worn out the gap by 0.1 of a mil. So what do we then decide to do? We decide to re-shim it and push the gap back in. Now, I like a gap roughly about 0.85 of a millimetre is my rough gap size. And, of course, the Cellarman comes along and says, oh, no, the gap's already set like that. And I said, no, it isn't. And we suddenly had a big debate, didn't we, on measuring the gaps in a roller mill, didn't we, Cellarman?
How to use a set of feeler gauge is what the discussion was.
What's a feeler gauge to somebody who may not know?
Well, a feler gauge is just what we do. It sets gaps, and they use it in automotive and everything.
But what is it to somebody who doesn't know?
It's a piece of thin metal, metal about half-inch wide, and they go in varying thicknesses up from 0.1 of a thou up to 35 thou.
In other words, these are sheets of metal. These are sheets of metal that are specifically and accurately grounded to a specific thickness.
That's right.
So that you can sit there and put it in and measure the gaps. And they use these for spark plugs in motors. You use them all over the place in an engineering workshop. So the Cellarman gets there. Now tell the listener how you measure the gap in a roller mill.
How I measure any gap with feeler gauge is the correct method, and that is a light drag, and not a bloody it spins the roller mill around.
Don't say what I do. Your method was...
That's what my method...
Your method was stick it in, and as long as it could move up and down the roller mill, that was your gap.
As long as it has a slight drag on it.
Just barely a touch.
No, it's not barely a touch.
Yes, that was you would do, barely a touch.
It's not barely a touch, but a slight drag.
Now,
there is a difference.
Me, what I do with feeler gauges...
He's got to drive him in with that bloody hammer.
No, it should go in there and grab the mill and make the rollers turn quite firmly, and that without denting it.
And I'll say once again, incorrect.
Look, I am a university graduate. You're just an engineer.
That's right.
Who do you think people are going to believe?
Me.
Yeah, right. And the reason I do it my method is my stepfather used to build racing car motors, and his method was you had to have a firm grab. The metal in a feeler gauge was hard, it shouldn't compress, and that's your accurate gap. Whether you believe the Cellarman or whether you believe me, here's the key. I noticed a decrease in my efficiency, correct?
Well, you tell me that, yep.
That's right. So the gap had got bigger, and we had to firm it in, didn't we?
Well, we firmed it in.
Yes, and I wanted it in again back to 0.1 of a millimetre back in again, didn't I?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it doesn't matter which method you use. What's the one thing you've got to be when you're using any sort of...
Any measuring instrument and that at all is it mainly a comparative measure.
That's it.
That's
be
right.
consistent with your
comparative,
measurement.
I said. It's comparative.
Yeah, that's
right?
it.
So you've got to, well, as you say, it's got to be... You've got to do it the same way all the time.
That's
now,
right.
Whether you got the results you want, but you haven't got the gap you think you've got. That's the point I'm making.
Okay.
You've got a smaller gap than that.
Yeah, okay. It doesn't matter whether I agree with the Cellarman, which I don't, and I'm going to stand by it, even though he's an engineer. I'm still not agreeing with him because of principle alone, because I don't make mistakes, mate. Haven't you learnt that yet?
Oh, don't. What about next Thursday?
As the most egotistical brewer on the World Wide Web, I do not make mistakes. You got that? Now, it doesn't matter. We did pull it in by moving shims around 0.1 of a mil, didn't we?
Yep.
From when you measured it to when we re-put it back together again, didn't we?
Yep.
And my method, it still pulled in roughly 0.1 of a millimetre as well. And this is the important thing about this recalibration stuff that we talk about, Craft Brewer, is look at everything. Don't just assume, look at everything, isn't it, Cellarman?
Yep, that's it. You've got to assess all your equipment and all your procedures.
And the other thing to look at is I'm going to start looking at is size of grains as well, just to see whether they have changed over time as well. But I found it most interesting, regardless, that you can wear out a roller mill. Isn't it interesting that you can do that?
But it's like anything else. Any metal part wears out, even if it's used on a soft material. That's why machinery's got to be adjusted and bloody reset every so often.
Too right, Cellarman. Enough of this seriousness and fighting, Cellarman. It's Christmas, isn't it?
That's right.
And every Christmas I play one particular beery thing, I suppose, that's quite unique to Australia. Australian race callers, of course, are some of the best callers in the world, aren't they?
Oh, they are.
Oh, they're so brilliant. And every year I have to play it, and I normally play this at the end of the program, but I've got another song that's so ridiculous, it's taken its slot. But it's Christmas, mate. We haven't had the race call this Christmas yet, have we?
We haven't.
We better put it on.
Yep.
Waiting here now in the year 1 BC for the main event today, the Christmas Cup, to be run over 2,000 years. Runners moving in, sheep and cattle taking up their positions in the stable now. Virgins ready. Bright stars flashing in the sky, and they're away in a manger with the wise men, the angels and the donkey bringing up the rear. Jesus out in front from a large pack of disciples. Blessed are the poor, blessed are the meek. Oh, Lazarus is down. Oh, but now he's up again and makes a miraculous recovery as we round the first corner. Passing the 1st century AD, it's Rome dominating and the meek are looking less blessed by the minute. Persecution, crucifixion running rampant as we reach the 5th century, and now Rome is down. Yes, Rome has fallen badly and the early Christians have taken the lead from a large pack of heathens, leaving the Dark Ages. Now we see the Crusades followed by rape, pillage and plunder. Just after that comes the Inquisition and it's witches, torture, burning. Hey, Monsignor, pop another pagan on the barbie. Church of Rome still in front at the Reformations. Then it's Lutherans, latecomers, Latter-day Saints, Mormons, Methodists, Protestants, Puritans, High Church, Low Church. At least they go to church, which is more than you can say as we reach the modern era. Christianity, Christmas spirit. It's a time to give, a time to get, a time to get thoroughly pissed. A time for peace. A piece of chicken, piece of turkey, piece of ham, piece of pie, piece of cake, piece of pudding, Auntie Jill's pavlova, some quiche, a glass of wine, a can of beer, another slice of that cake, please. Oh, I'm so stuffed I'll never eat another thing. As we pass the 12th day of Christmas, it's my true love now, giving away 12 shirts, 11 towels, 10 salad spinners, 9 drills of drilling, 8 discs of sanding, 7 saws of sawing, 6 Jaffa lights, 5 microwaves, 4 soap and rope, 3 neckties, 2 pairs of socks, and a Partridge Family album in a plastic pear tree. Barbie bringing up the rear. Rounding the final turn now, we see the end is nigh, and Rudolph the reindeer noses in front from a sled full of presents. Oh, there's rollerblades now, radios, ray guns, cap guns, little guns, loud guns. If you don't stop shooting that damn thing round me, I'll smash it over my knee and stick it in the bin guns. After then comes the X-Men, the BMX-Men, the Barbies. It's Beach Barbie, Bride Barbie, long blonde Barbie bulging in front with a big breast now. But hark the herald angels sing, because here come the dinosaurs. It's the Stegosaurs, it's the Tyrannosaurs, it's the Transformers, it's the Terminators, it's the G.I. Joes, it's the Legos now, neck and neck from the Nintendo. Oh, the Super Nintendo's going out, boy. And the Super Mario, the Super Sega. I can't pick it, it's the Super Sega Mega Drive. Get down to the line. Oh, and what a race. What a result. And we have a winner in the name of the Cole Samire and the great big W. Amen.
Oh dear, I do love that. I especially like the bit where the guy says, what is it? He said, ray gun, pop gun. If you fire that gun one more time, I'll break it up on my knee and throw it in the bin gun. I just love that. Oh dear. Merry Christmas to you all out there, by the way, other podcasters and brewcasters out there. And if you want to use that, you got my permission to use it. What beer have you pulled out to show us?
This is my maple wheat ale.
Okay.
It's only a very young beer as well.
And how did you get inspired to make this?
Well, I come across a couple of books the other week, and they're both by the same people. One's called Clone Beers, and the other's called Beer Captured.
All right.
And they've got a lot of good recipes in them, and they're for all brewers. The recipes are in kit and kilo style. They're in mini mash style, and also full grain mash ingredients into them. So I thought, oh bugger, I'll give this one a try.
Okay, so it's got maple syrup in it. Is it what is it? A wit beer?
It's a wit, a Hefeweizen. It's got.
It's a Hefeweizen or a wit?
No, it's a Hefeweizen. It's not a wit, you know.
It's more of a malted wheat or raw wheat?
Both.
Okay, so you got
malted wheat. It's got a kilo of cracked raw wheat.
Well, hang on, we'll give you the recipe out in a minute. So it's a bit of a hybrid mongrel. A bit between a Hefeweizen and a wit. Certainly got the Hefeweizen colour. Don't really taste the maple that much, do you?
You don't taste the maple much at all.
Rather nice. Holds a good head. Very slight cloudiness. Nothing serious on that. Quite clear, really. Well, not too bad. So what's the recipe on this?
Well, depending on the quantity you're making, of course, obviously. But I made 42 litres of it. And it's 4 kilos of bloody Pilsner malt. Bloody 2 kilos of bloody wheat malt, malted wheat, 1 kilo of unmalted wheat.
Yep. That's
the basic recipe in that.
Okay, and what this tastes like, about 20 IBUs?
Yeah, it's about 22 IBUs actually.
Okay, then any spices or anything else added to that?
No.
Yeast?
Yeast is a Hefeweizen yeast.
Not a bad beer at all. There, follow that through. Again, this is about the fear no beer attitude that this program has. Experiment. I found with a lot of subtle flavours, craft brewer, that especially maple syrup would fall into this category. A lot of these subtle flavours come through as the beer ages. How old's this beer?
Oh, it's very young, mate. Very young indeed. It's only about 3 weeks in the bottle.
Well, I look forward to trying this in a few months' time, and I reckon probably the maple flavour, when it sort of ages and mellows, I think that maple flavour might come through just subtly in the background. So I'm looking forward to trying that. Beautiful colour to it. Nice beer all round, sir. Well, we've been covering the tax laws in Australia, and a review of the tax laws is going on in Australia at the moment. In the last program, we actually did talk about that there is submissions going through by the micro brewing industry to get the tax law changed. Basically, the microbreweries in Australia are taxed to the hilt, while the wine industry gets a free ride, don't they?
Virtually, that's about it too, yeah.
That's it. Well, at the moment, there's a couple of web pages I'll give out in a minute for those who want to follow through on this, and petitions are now starting up. But here's a nice news story that also appeared in a local television station in regards to this. Have a listen.
You're watching Newsline, an RMI TV student production. A story about beer will probably have you thinking more boony and bogans than boutique brews. But over the last decade, microbreweries have become more popular, with drinkers looking for a different experience. Despite increasing sales, small-time brewers say they are struggling to make ends meet. They've been lobbying the federal government to introduce tax concessions that would help them compete with the big players in the market. Thomas Keane reports.
could be forgiven for thinking there were only a few beers available at your local bottle shop. But smaller brewers, known as microbreweries, have never been more popular with drinkers. Buckley's beer in Healesville is aimed in the microbrewing industry.
We're traditional brewers. This is our fifth. We believe in natural products and natural brew systems. We don't add any preservatives or filtration systems. Natural, full-bodied, full-flavoured beer.
While becoming increasingly popular, microbreweries still produce just 1% of Australia's beer, and most struggle to survive. This inspired the name Buckley's, a reference to escaped convict William Buckley.
5 years ago, we were trying to work out a name for the beer. We had Yarra Flats Brewery, but we're trying to work out a name for the beer. And one morning we said, we've got Buckley's chance. We think we've named our beer after William Buckley, having been predated by 302 odd attempts at brewing in the past. If we named it after William, we've got a chance of surviving.
Transport at Federation Square is a big supporter of local microbreweries like Buckley's.
Something different. We're trying to encourage people to try different things, and the microbreweries are a great way to do it because craft brewers, they spend a lot of time perfecting their beer, so it's not mainstream. It's not processed overly quick, so it's actually putting out some better products.
And it seems punters like what they're tasting.
Definitely more flavour and taste. With the microbreweries, there's definitely that they employ top brewers. They are specialists in their field. It's a bit more of an art, I think. And they do offer something unique from a taste perspective, certainly, yeah.
But making a good beer is not the hard part, says the Victorian Association of Microbreweries.
Incredibly hard to even start because the capital required is huge. Stainless steel costs the earth. Getting a foothold in the industry is extremely difficult because it's an industry dominated by two major players who've been operating for decades.
The main gripe of small brewers isn't with their competitors, but with the federal government and the tax office.
We've got all the other, challenges of a small business, but then 25% of our turnover is taken straight out and goes to ATO in the form of excise tax.
Paul Holgate from Holgate's Brewhouse says this level of tax is a major burden.
I don't know of any other small business that has revenue, say, between $300,000, $1.5 million per annum, that would be able to survive if, on top of GST, company tax and all the other taxes, they had to put 25 to 30% of their sales excise tax.
BAMI has been lobbying Canberra for tax concessions similar to those that the wine industry receives, where all producers get a rebate on the first $500,000 of excise tax paid. This has meant that about 90% of wineries tax at all.
Run, rabbit, run, run, run. Don't give the farmer his fun.
Small wineries have made a big contribution to regional tourism. Federal Minister for Small Business and Tourism, Fran Bailey,
are already an important part of regional tourism. So the stronger that we can brewery sector, the stronger we can make the regional tourism sector. It is not fair for brewers to be paying the same rate of excise on their product as the big brewers like Carlton United.
Microbrewers were hopeful that the May budget would have included the tax concessions, but for them there was no good news this year.
We were disappointed that we didn't get a reduction in excise in the budget this week, but we're continuing. We haven't given up the fight.
And if the industry doesn't get reductions in excise, BAMI says some brewers may be forced to close.
The industry will be crippled. It'll be a real shame because we're starting to see quite a few startups now, but they're not surging forward, and it's likely that there'd be a rationalisation pretty quickly, and I don't think we'd get much above 1 or 1.5% of the market, which would be a great opportunity lost.
But at Buckley's Beer, John still thinks microbrewers have a chance of surviving in the future, but only if punters embrace their brews more than the government has.
There's a lot of beer drinkers out there, and all they need to do is follow their palate and realise that there's a lot more flavour to be had out there than perhaps what they used to.
Thomas Keane, Newsline.
So as you can see, Craftbrewer, it's starting to gain in Australia a bit of momentum, and the interesting thing about it is that there's a lot of politicians involved in trying to promote this. And I got this feeling they're trying to promote that every little small town has a microbrewery in it, Cellarman, and that wouldn't be a bad thing at all, would it?
It'd be a very good thing, actually, more than one. I'd like to see about 2 or 3.
Well, I work out that roughly, if you can get a population of anywhere between 20 and 40,000 people in a town, it can support a microbrewery. Not a problem in the world. And especially, as they said, apart from all the other taxes you pay, 25% of your turnover also goes as part of the tax as well. If they can get rid of that, that will make it virtually viable for anybody to set up a small microbrewery at a corner shop or whatever. It would certainly spurn me into action to possibly setting a small one up myself. What about you?
Yeah, I'd really love to set up an actual brewery, microbrewery.
Okay then, so here's the 2 web pages to go to. www.faircraftbrewer.com.au is where the petition has been set up, and this is being run by the Australian Microbrewing Association, and they're found at www.microbrewing.com.au. Do look up those sites. Give your support by all means, because this is a cause that could see a flourishing of microbreweries in Australia, just like there are wineries at present. And the great thing is, we'd have microbreweries all over Australia, unlike the wineries, which are only occurring in a couple of areas in Australia. And that would be a great thing. No matter where you travel, beer on hand. Who could argue more than that, hey, mate?
Yep, that's it.
All right, mate. We've been doing a new series that comes from England called Risky Business. Now, Risky Business, for those who haven't followed it, you need to go 2 programs back to radio.craftbrewer.org. If this is your first time, don't listen to this segment yet. Go back 2 programs and listen to the first one. These are 2 guys who are going to start up a microbrewery in England. No experience whatsoever, no idea what they're doing, but they love beer. They think they could just start up a microbrewery. Last program, they just made an offer for a pub. I think it was close to £130,000. And the signal dropped out. Oh, shit. Were they going to get it? Could they get the signal back? They were ready to buy. It dropped out. Will they get their pub? Will they be able to start up? I think we know the answer to this, of course. Yeah. But I'm trying to build suspense, Cellarman. I'm just trying hard.
All you're doing is putting me to sleep.
Okay, then. Have a listen, Craftbrewer.
Beer. We consume nearly 30 million pints a day. But the beer trade is in crisis. 4 pubs a day are closing for good. Anyone choosing to get involved in this ailing industry would have to be mad. But actor Neil Morrissey and his drinking partner, chef Richard Fox, are going to do just that.
The brand name is going to be Morrissey Fox Beers, which breaks down really easy into mofo, so we can be the motherfuckers of beers.
After 30 years of drinking beer,
Hang on, how do you do this?
They now want to brew their own. There's just one small problem.
I don't really know anything about making beer.
Only 2 hours after Neil's first viewing, the boys decide to put in an offer. They need to negotiate on price to offset the cost of building their own brewery.
Moments of truth.
The pub owners have put its sale in the hands of a local agent.
Andy, Richard Fox here. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, very good. How are you, Richard?
Yeah, very good, thanks. Obviously, you're asking 150. It's a bit high. We'll offer 120.
Right, that's a little below where my clients are looking for. I am fairly confident that if you could come to 130, we could do a deal with you.
Right, just hold on a second, Andy. Okay. Mate, at 130, we have a deal. Are you there?
Don't go away now!
Mate, are you there? This is a crucial thing.
Andy?
Andy, can you hear me?
Damn it, we just lost the bloody signal. Phone him back immediately.
Fuck! Right. Hang on, right, here we go.
Andy Davidson speaking.
Andy, it's Richard again. We lost you at the crucial moment.
I do apologise.
Anyway, you were saying?
Yes, if we can get to 130, I'm sure that I can persuade my clients to accept that.
Mate, you've got a deal.
Okay, we've done a deal at 130.
We've done a deal at 130.
Proud owners of the punch bowl you are.
Come on!
We look forward to it.
Okay.
Ta-ra.
Take care, mate.
We are the proud owners.
Yes! It's an absolutely magnificent place. It's all our plans, all in one little punch bowl.
The work starts now.
Yeah, now this is where the real work starts.
This is it. Big time. Man, I need a beer.
Yeah, I need a beer. As well.
Should we go for it?
Well, we have to go and dump the car or something and
right,
go and have a beer.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
I am looking forward to this.
Welcome to Nevada.
3 weeks in, and the boys turn their attention back to ale.
Oh, that's lovely.
Sampling beers might look like a jolly,
The drunker everyone gets, the more beers they recommend. That one was brilliant.
but the boys consider it critical research.
Do you think if we drink enough of this stuff, we'll actually, by osmosis, we'll be able to produce it?
Yeah.
What about the Smoky Bear? Because I love the name.
But with a beer due on the pumps and in supermarkets in 5 months' time, they need to stop boozing and start brewing.
We're going to feel like real brewers with one of these, aren't we?
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
Every novice brewer's first port of call is the local brew shop.
We need a thermometer.
Do you have them here?
I've got a meat thermometer.
It's a one-stop brew shop. Of course they've got the thermometer.
I've got a good idea. Let's think fruitiness. Is there a hop that will give us fruitiness?
To cash in on summer drinkers, they want to make a light pale ale.
Back to me.
Well, I think we've chosen exactly the right malt.
That's what I had in my head.
Grams of gold.
With only 6 months to get their beer to market, they can't afford any mistakes.
What's the damage?
£184.19, please.
If we sold it all pint for pint, we could make a tenner.
I think we should set up a business doing this.
Now it's back to Richard's kitchen for their brewing debut.
The newest brewery in Harrogate. Absolutely.
Their homebrew kit is a microbrewery in miniature.
She's given us the basic stuff to start with. Okay.
Going it alone, the boys have just an instruction manual for guidance.
Oh, hang on. Bollocks. Fallen at the first bloody hurdle.
Let's have a look at that food.
Even the most subtle variations in ingredients and quantities will have a massive effect on the taste of their beer.
Do that for the camera.
Oh, look. One black curly hair in my mash tub.
But I've got the answer to that.
Now that is much more like it. Sorry, mate.
We can't even fucking sterilise. What chance have we got at brewing beer?
In less than 6 months, the boys hope to mass produce their very own recipe.
I think it's looking more like beer now.
First step is to soak grain to create a mash.
It says in the recipe book that you can't afford to have lumps, otherwise you'll have a bad mash. If you have a bad mash, you have crap beer.
I promise you, there's nothing dry in there.
Apart from those dry bits in there.
Finally, the mash is left to soak. An hour later, and the boys have wort, the magic liquid that forms the basis for Morrissey Fox's first ever beer.
The first runnings may be turbid, and these should be returned carefully to the mash until it runs bright. So,
do you think that's turbid? It's certainly not crystal clear, is it?
Have you got a dictionary?
Turbid. Full of mud or dirt.
Well,
I wouldn't say it's full of mud and dirt, but it's not clear.
Only when the mixture runs dry can the boys move on, but it's already past 10 p.m.
Maybe it's meant to come out at that speed.
It's meant to come out slowly, but that's ridiculous.
At this rate, Neil and Richard will be up all night.
The lesson for the day is start brewing early in the morning. All right?
Don't start at 5 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
That is stupid.
Clean your equipment the night before.
Worried that their beer will turn sour if they stop now, the boys put in a late-night call to the homebrew shop owners.
Sorry to bother you at this time of night, mate, but our concern is, do we have to go without sleep tonight or sleep in shifts and wait for this to come out, or can we leave it? We can leave it. Brilliant.
Oh, I can't tell you how much that's cheered me up.
Right.
This is such a relief. I'm really glad we can do this, but good night, beer.
Good night, beer.
Good night, work.
Sweet dreams. It's going to dream of hops. Bloody hell.
Day 2 of a brewing process that should have taken 5 hours.
Ooh. Well, that's completely gone.
The unveiling.
Oh, man, that looks all right.
It does. It's like a mirror.
It smells like Horlicks.
Finally, the lads seem to be getting somewhere.
Our own blend of hops.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
Do you think we're actually going to make a good beer here? We bloody well should be after all this.
Well, whatever happens, even if it comes out like cloudy mush, it'll get us drunk.
There are 2 options for testing the Morrissey Fox moonshine. One is by taste.
That is ultra bitter.
The other is by science.
Oh, yes, this is good.
The thick black line floating above the water level indicates the brew could be too sweet.
It means we've got a lot of sugar in there.
Since sugar turns to alcohol, the boys may not have made beer. It could be more like rocket fuel.
There'll be brewers all over the country going, "Get into the black line, you idiot! What are you making? What are you making? Tennant Super?"
Adding yeast should convert their fire water into drinkable ale.
So that, now, very much, is the beginning of beer.
Oh!
Can you manage?
Yeah. Straight back.
Because there's no way I can get hold of that for you either.
Just support me if I collapse.
Okay. Richard! Richard!
For the next 3 weeks, the future of the boys' business will be fermenting in a plastic bucket.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and a half hours it's taken us to get to this point now. And now, it's a patience game. So let's bugger off and get on with some other work.
Yeah. Let's go and drink some beer that somebody else has made.
If this brew fails, they will have wasted precious time and will have to go back to square one. It's 2 weeks since Neil and Richard had their offer accepted on ye old punch bowl. "200 miles from the pub, the boys are in London to plan a national advertising campaign for their beer.
I've got something fairly exciting for you to, well, I think fairly exciting for you to look at. We want to launch a beer.
Marketing executive Tim Ashton is an old mate of Neil's and the branding guru behind some high-profile campaigns.
It's not going to be easy. The thing is, we know no one said it was going to be easy, but I should be able to use a sort of public's attitude towards me to be able to launch a beer.
You can do the voiceover on the outs.
Yeah, okay. Well,
having worked in beer all my working life, and Neil having drunk beer all his working life, you know, we're just sort of bringing together, you know, an area that we're passionate about, basically.
It did come from, you know, let's open a pub in Yorkshire. I mean, a gastro sort of pub without ever wanting to sort of, you know, overuse that term.
But you want to create a beer that's going to have national popularity and could be a brand.
We want to get in the supermarkets. We want, you know, we want our beer to be up there
and also
everybody else's.
I mean, obviously launch with our beer, but also have, I mean, if we think it'll work, have a product line ready to go with.
Neil, just this all sounds great, but there's one question that both of you have got to ask. I think there's 5,000 beers in the UK, and probably only about 500 brands, and you want to create a brand, right? Why do we need another one?
We're a kind of a young, enthusiastic micro brewer, and I think that's the only area in beer that is in growth at the moment, is the microbrewery area. And we want to sort of help along the way to sort of diverting people from the really bad for them lager and make people into more real ale drinkers. Well, the brand name is going to be Morrissey Fox Beers, which breaks down really easy into mofo, so we can be the motherfuckers of beers.
Yeah, look good the t-shirt.
That's a good selling point. Do you think a bit by that? Hey, buy this motherfucker. No, buy this motherfucker. This is the motherfucker of beers.
You need to get some time alone, I think.
And we've even brewed our own ale.
I mean, we
hang on, you brewed your own ale?
Yes, we
What
have.
does it taste like?
We don't know yet.
Oh, there we go. There are people that do nothing but this and find it hard. And fail. I mean, there's probably statistics that say, like most new businesses, some crazy statistic fail within the first 12 months. I don't see why this should be any different from any other business. Now, you're going to commit money and time to this and reputation, and it's a business like no other. There's no givens here. Nobody's going to give you the breaks, or no one's going. The market's not going to suddenly come to you because you've been on telly. I think what you've got to do is go out there. Find out as much as you can, because at the moment it feels a little bit like you're caught up in the enthusiasm of it. If you come back, then we'll have another conversation. But I don't know whether to expect to see you again, I'll be honest with you. I think they're going to find it a lot harder than they think now, because they haven't really interrogated the business enough yet, and I think they're going to work out that what they've got isn't as newsworthy as they think. Oh, they want to make a new beer and they want to make it from a microbrewery. Well, there's a lot of other people saying the same thing, and they've got credentials, much greater credentials than Richard Fox and Neil Morrissey, to be frank.
Yes, they brewed their first beer. Will it be a success? Oh, heaven help us. I'll tell you what. Fancy learning to brew all grain brewing from a book that they just purchased. Didn't read it. It's good, isn't it? Fancy trying to do that. And will they listen to the advertising company man when he says, "You're mad, you're stupid, don't do it"? I don't think so. Anyway, will they listen to him? Will their beer be okay? I guess we're just going to have to follow through and see in future episodes. All right, Cellarman. I'm surprised you got no more jokes to tell.
No, I'm laying off for Christmas. What do you call it? I've gone on the wagon for Christmas.
You've given us a Christmas present, haven't you? Yeah, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. He's not telling jokes anymore.
I got another one.
Oh, don't you dare. All right, let's keep this program short because we promised a craft brewer nothing too heavy over the Christmas period. And for those who are still with us and won't be till the end of the program, in our program just after Christmas, it's going to be light and airy. I have got so much weird and wacky beer news, I think I'm going to dedicate the whole program to just a heap of weird and wacky beer news. So, in the weird and wacky world of beer, if you've got information before the next program, shoot it to me, Graham L. Sanders at westnet.com.au, or Skype me with information. I'm after all your weird and wacky world of beers. I'm just doing a full program on that for the program just after Christmas. Nice, light, and a bit of fun for those of you suffering hangovers. Not me, mate. I'll just be permanently pissed the whole time.
That's it. Avoid hangovers. Stay drunk.
That's it. Anyway, in our technical section, I've been asked many times how I can get through a double decoction beer so quick. I made a double decoction beer last week.
Drink it.
Not drink it, make it, you idiot. Now, you do a drop infusion beer, Cellarman. How long does it take you to make a drop infusion beer? Go to woe,
about 6 hours.
6 hours. I can do a double decoction beer easily under 8. Sometimes, if everything works together, I can have it done a bit over 6 hours. And people have asked me, how the hell can you do it? It is impossible. So we're going to give you the tips necessary in speeding up your brew day so you don't spend your life worrying about making a beer and enjoy the hobby. And that's the whole point of this, isn't it, Cellarman? Enjoying the hobby.
It's no good doing it if you're not enjoying it,
And one of the first things we talked about in our calibration experiments is, yes, it's all very well and good to calibrate your beers and get all the pH meters and refractometers and temperature gauges and try to get it to the nth degree. And the very first tip, number 1, we give out is, yes, it's good to be anal on occasion, but near enough is generally good enough for the average brewer at home, isn't it?
That's right. You don't have to be anal about it whatsoever.
That's it. That you've got room, like a fudge factor, I suppose.
Yep.
You don't need to sit there and be totally anal about pH and everything else. Once you calibrate yourself, you can work out roughly how much acid you need, roughly what temperatures you need to set, and everything sort of falls into place. It's about that routine, isn't it? You get that routine going. These microbreweries and major breweries you see around the world, they brew a beer every day or sometimes 3 or 4 batches a day. And they've got the routine so down pat. The reason they can do this is because it's locked in. It's like a robot working. It just goes bang, 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 bang. And they don't sit there and be anal over pH and everything else because they can do minor adjustments where needed. They've done it so many times. So, yes, it's good to have all the fancy gear, but don't have to be anal and try to get it exactly right on. If you're near enough, you're good enough, correct?
Correct.
All right, any tip from you, sir?
I got several.
Okay, give us one.
Well, I've got a insulated mash tun.
Yes?
Double-lined, for the simple reason. I preheat it when I wash my rice hulls, and it means when you put the grain and the water in to do your mashing, you've already got set temperature in there already. You don't have to require higher temperature water, or you don't get so much heat loss.
So preheating your gear before you do the mixing,
tun, yep.
Before your mixing saves a heap of time?
It does.
Because the temperature stabilises?
It stabilises a lot quicker than that, yep.
Quicker. Speaking of mixing and everything else, one of my top 10 tips is a decent stirring spoon, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
A big, good, solid spoon that you can lift the car with. Don't muck around with these cheap plastic spoons and then you're trying to be gentle stirring everything. You want a good, solid spoon that you can get right to the bottom, lift dry grain clumps up, mix quickly, not worry about breaking it, don't you?
That's it, exactly right.
Your spoon is stainless steel?
Stainless steel, yep.
Yep, I've got a spoon that's stainless steel and solid as shit. You could not break it in a million years. And why does this save time? Because you're not afraid of properly mixing the grain. You mix it faster, you mix it quicker. You don't have to worry about things breaking. You can really get to the bottom quickly, lift up the dry bits. You really get a quick mix. It's surprising how much time you save if you've got a solid spoon, isn't it?
Makes a big difference. As you say, with mixing in, you don't have to worry about getting it caught somewhere and breaking in half, and all of a sudden you've got to look for another spoon as well.
Okay, any more tips from you?
Yep. The water I use for preheating and washing my rice hulls, I put in my heat exchange unit. So you don't have to heat up the water in the heat exchange unit. It's already hot.
There you go. So reusing the water. In a similar vein to that, try to save time by using the heat stored up in one thing to another. A Herm system is a great system where you're heating up your sparge water, but your sparge water is also used to heat up your mash water and your mash tun and maintain its temperature. By reusing the gear or your equipment and conserving the heat by reusing it around your brewery, it saves a heap of time. I'll give another one which I always think is a great idea, is weigh everything the day before. Have all your ingredients, everything weighed up, ready to go. All set up, ready to go the day before. How much difference does that make, that you're not running around trying to weigh out your grains, get your grains crushed, get your hops out, get different ingredients, have them all set up, ready to go? Saves you heaps in your day, doesn't it?
It does. You make sure everything, as you say, be prepared. Do the job properly first off. You know, it's still really part of your brew day, but it's not where you're being bogged down at the one time.
You're not bogged down. Another one that I've always said is clean up as you go. Don't leave your cleaning to the end of the day when everything's finished. There's plenty of avenues to clean up your gear as you go. And if you clean up as you go, by the time you dump the last of your boiler through your chiller into the fermenter, all you've got left to clean is what?
One boiler and one chiller.
That's it. Everything else has been cleaned and stacked away. In a similar vein to that, you see those 3-tier setups, Cellarman, right?
Yep.
And you can't pack it away until you finish the boil, can you? Because it's all one setup. My setup's divided in two. My mash tun and sparge is on a totally different setup to my boiler and chiller. So once I finish sparging into the boiler, I can wheel that section away, clean it up, scrub it down, waiting for the boiler to go or during the boil, and then roll it away and pack it away in the shed while the boil's still going on. You've got a similar setup where you've got your gear separate, haven't you?
Yeah, it's all separate, and as soon as the sparge is done and the boil is full, I can do my heat exchange unit, I can do my bloody mash tun, clean out my sparge tank water as well, clean that out.
That's it.
And it's all taken care of, and all I can do, as you say, is clean either the immersion chiller or the bloody counterflow cooler and the bloody boiler itself.
You got that in one. Now, what other tips you got?
Well, there's a couple here.
Just give us one. We've got heaps to go through.
I mash in with only enough water to do the job at first off, so it gets the temperature right. So I've got more water there that I can use later to raise the temperature for the step infusion.
Okay.
Right, so I can do the rest. So I only do enough mash in to get the temperature of the grain and to mash it in, so I can do the first rest. And then I keep heating the water up, and when I require to raise the temperature, I can put boiling water into it.
Very good. So you're leaving yourself leeways for adjustments.
Yep.
By mashing in thick. In a similar vein, people ask me with decoction how I can get through decoction so quick. A couple of tips on decoctions, craft brewer. When you dough in, keep yourself a few litres of water, like the Cellarman has said, so that you have a bit of a dry dough in, if you like. Still enough water will wash through and carry the enzymes to the bottom of the mash tun. But the water you got left over, you put that in a pot on the stove and get that to boiling straight away. So then when you lift your first decoction, and I'm assuming, craft brewer, you know what a decoction is, I'm not going to explain that to you. Look up the archives, radio.craftbrewer.org, if you don't understand this bit. When you lift your first decoction, you lift it dry, but it goes straight into boiling water. So therefore, already my first decoction, when I lift it out of the mash tun, is at its rest temperature. Makes sense? And you don't have to worry about heating grain up and scalding the bottom of the pot with the grain. The grain goes in, and it's immediately at its first rest for its decoction. Now, what I do then is the second tip with the decoction mash, you only need to rest it at its sugar rest for 20 minutes, not an hour like some books say. 20 minutes will give you enough conversion. Concentrate on the alpha amylase rest, about 70 degrees Celsius. Rest it for 20 minutes and then immediately heat it up. Your next tip to get those melanoidin reactions in a decoction is you don't need it at boiling to get the melanoidin reactions. A low heat, once it gets over about 90 degrees Celsius, because that heat at the bottom so concentrated of the pot, you get melanoidin reactions, and you'll see it with the spoon. You'll be scraping off this wonderful caramelly gunk off the bottom, and that's your melanoidin reactions already occurring at about 90 degrees. So you just raise it, and as soon as that pot gets to a boil, you can then dump it straight in. You don't need to then boil the pot for 20 minutes. It's probably taking you 10 minutes to get up to that position, and the whole time you've been creating melanoidins the whole time, and they can just go straight in. So that saves time in the decoction, and it gives you those wonderful flavours. More tips, Cellarman.
Yeah, moving right along there, I use a heat shield around the boiler. It does two things. It saves on power, in my case it's gas, and the other thing it does, it actually makes the boiler more efficient.
And it brings it up to a boil quicker too,
That's right,
doesn't
more
it?
efficient.
That's it, because the heat is not radiating out of the bottom. You're funneling the heat up the sides of your boiler, and so the heat exchanging is occurring between the heat going up the sides and the boiler, plus it's acting as a bit of an insulation shield around the boiler as well, isn't it?
Yep, it saves you from getting hot.
So a heat shield is a fantastic device to use, especially with gas, for using less gas, raising the boil quicker. In a similar vein, we talked about don't be too gadget mad, but some gadgets save a heap of time. A good pH meter saves a heap of time. If you get a automatic temperature controlling one, you don't have to wait for samples to cool. Don't use hydrometers, use refractometers, because you don't have to wait for a sample to cool. You can just put a drop on a refractometer and get an instantaneous reading, can't you?
That's right, and if you've got an automatic temperature controlled one again,
even better. Even better again. Pumps are great for recirculating and stabilising your temperature. So some gadgets, strangely enough, are great to have in your brewery, and it's worth getting those gadgets. Cellarman?
Yep. I believe in starting the boil as soon as possible. In other words, if you've got an electric boiler, an element inside, like a kettle type thing, as soon as it's above the element, I start it. Right? But as to mine being gas, as soon as I've got about 1.5 inch layer in the bottom, I turn the small burner on and I start it, so it keeps getting hotter and hotter as you're putting the water in, as it's circulating in doing your sparge.
And the ideal timing should be, as you put the last of it in, it should be starting to come to a boil, shouldn't it?
Yep, that's right.
And that's the whole idea. It saves a heap of time. Don't dump all in. You can, and then wait for it to come to a boil. If you want to save time, put the heat on early. Not too fast, but get it heating up so that by the end of the sparge, you're ready to boil. Now, a big time saver is a good chiller for the boiler. How often do you have to wait and wait and wait for the boil to chill down till you can decant? It can be a real
pain in the butt.
20 minutes, 30 minutes, you're waiting for this thing to chill down before you can decant off. A good quality chiller, a good plate chiller. What do you use?
Well, I have an immersion cooler.
But
well.
you use with that?
Oh, I use the Temperite with that, with its chilled water.
With its chilled water to really bring it down quickly. So a good chilling system that brings it down instantaneously allows you, when the boil's finished, to immediately just ram open the boiler and dump it, doesn't it?
It does, and also gives you a better cold break.
It certainly does. Now, any other tips from you?
Well, no, that's about it, really.
So there you go. Some tips along the way to help you with speeding up your brew day. There's plenty more out there as well, Craft Brewer, but these are just some that you can experiment with. Follow them through. You might think they're a load of rubbish. You might practice some of these yourself already. On the other hand, you might love brewing so much and so bored shitless you don't want to go and see your wife or the kids and want to stay out there for 15 hours. Don't blame you at all for that either. She must be obeyed in the bedroom, and that's where I'd like to keep her. Okay. Enough of that. Any final words, Cellarman? We promised a short program because it's Christmas.
Let me think. No, not really. We're going to do another program before Christmas, are we?
Not before Christmas. Our next program will be the 28th of December, just after Christmas.
Just after Christmas, that's
before
right,
New Year.
Before New Year, okay. That's more like it, before the end of the year.
And
anyway.
as I said before, Craft Brewer, Weird and Wacky World of Beer. It's just going to be a fun program. We're just going to dig up a whole lot of stories from the Weird and Wacky World of Beer. Weird things, shit things, you name it. You got it, you send it, because we want to make a fun program if we can. So shoot it to us, Graham L. Sanders at westnet.com.au. That's GrahamLsanders at westnet.com.au, or Skype me, Craft Brewer, or Graham Sanders in Australia, and leave a message. Happy to play it as well. And if you're really a masochist, you can always contact the Cellarman, Lucky Ian at smartchat.net.au. Yes, there will be a program. Any final words from you?
Yeah, Merry Christmas everyone out there, and stay thirsty.
Stay thirsty, I like that. Yes, and I'm your brewmaster, Graham Sanders, and I thank you yet again for joining us on this program. Well, I've played a number of weird songs on this radio program, and it's never ceased to amaze me how weird they've got. Well, I got a song request that came in, and I can tell you this has got to be one of the weirder ones out there. Comes from Denmark, of all things. Now, I've played all sorts of weird genres of beer songs, but how about a half Danish, half English, country-style beer drinking song? Got you on that one, Cellarman? I'll let you speak on that.
You got me on that one.
I'll read the email. Hi, Graham. I suggest the attached song for the end of the next show. It's half English, half Danish Christmas song about drinking Highval, meaning a white beer. This is a low alcohol, 2.25% black sweet beer, which until the mid-1800s was the dominant beer style in Denmark until lagers took over. Now it's only drunk around Christmas, and this is the song that goes with it. Now, Craft Brewer, I warn you now, you'll probably follow this song, and as I said, it's got this weird half English, half Danish with a country music flair. Be it on your shoulders, it's Christmas, and it's my Christmas present to you, so till we meet again, it's your shout, mate.
Skål! There's white earl in that tun. Then the fest will soon begin. Put some white earl in your cup. When it's talking, feel it up. Like a hop, like a run, and it's very, very fun. Clask your law, clask your slow, like a hop, like a run, and it's very fun. Glim the trouble. And the bowl. This is a song I like to hear. This is music for my ear. Dance a little, stroll a dance. Dance it while you have the chance. Like a hop, like a run, and it's very, very fun. Clask your law, clask your stow. Like a hop, like a run, and it's very fun. Glim the trouble. And the bowl. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Go and swing then disappear. 5 and 6 and 2 and 8. That is good for an knees. Like a hop, like a run, and it's very, very fun. Clask your law, clask your stow. Like a hop, like a run, and it's very fun. Glim the trouble. And the bowl. There's Widle in Neptune. Then the fest will soon begin. Put some Widle in your cup. When it's rockin', feel it up. Like a hop, like a run, and it's very, very fun. Clask your law, clask your stow. Like a hop, like a run, and it's very fun. Glim the trouble. And the bowl. Like a run, and it's very, very fun. Clask your law, clask your stow. Like a hop, like a run, and it's very fun. Glim the trouble. And the bowl.
Gonna dance a little, gonna dance a little, gonna dance a little, stow dance.